welcome everybody to another edition of Quantum Connections here on quantumplanet.world. My name is David Farrell. I'm one of your co-hosts today, and I'm joined by my wonderful co-host, Bella Alvaran. Hi, Bella. How are you?
Hi, everybody. Super excited to be here today and to have Maia back in our conversation.
Right, and so the third person on our call today is the wonderful Maia Nartoomid, who we interviewed recently, and we are welcoming back into the studio today. Hi, Maia. How are you today?
Hello, I'm doing fine. Thank you, David and Bella. It's so wonderful to be back with you too. Like being back with the family again.
Thanks.
Oh, bless you. Yeah. So we did a wonderful, first we can say segment interview. I suspect it's going to be one of many moving forwards, but it was a few weeks ago now, and many people watched that video and enjoyed it a lot. And it's also somehow forming a conjoining bridge, we can say, to the upcoming path of the Jaguar, which is one of our first expeditions here on QPW. So in the first interview that we did, for those of you who've not yet seen it, and definitely recommend checking it out, link is in the show notes. We talked with Maia about a whole variety of different things, right, ladies, including Mayan time walkers in Lakesh, and another number of topics which we're going to follow on with today. So Bella, in terms of the Mayan stuff, where would you like Maia to take us on the journey today?
Right, so we want to pick up the thread that we had from the last conversation, where we talked about the High Mayans and how they are connected to the Pleiadians, and how Quetzalcoatl, which for the Mayans is Kukulkan, is also connected to Thoth. So we want to bring that conversation here today when we're going to be talking about grids, about the grids and the pyramids all around the planet, or the nodal points, which Maia was telling us earlier on, that they can be called temples. Wherever there is a nodal point is like a temple, and I'm sure that most of the temples around the planet have been built there. When you travel around like Latin America, you know that where there is a big church or cathedral, there was originally a big temple that was from the native people of that land. So those nodal points and reading the geomancy is super important, and is part of what we will be doing in the path of the Jaguar. And the Jaguars are connected to all of this, to the grid, to the portals, to stargates. So we want to start the conversation going that way. We love the great felines, and we want to talk more about the big Jaguars and the lions as well, because they are super important too. So where do you want to take us, Maia? What do you have on, let's say, Quetzalcoatl to start with, and the connection to everything else? Or Kukulkan?
Well, yes, Thoth told me many years ago that he was one of the 5 souls of Quetzalcoatl. And it's generally 3 or 5, like it's a setup or some kind, I don't know. And this doesn't occur with just regular people, because it's difficult for us to hold that frequency. But, high lumen beings and ones that are working in those higher frequencies are able to hold that alignment, kind of like, skydiving, and they all come out together and they hold hands. And if you didn't know how to do it, you'd all fall to the ground, the parachutes would work, So they have to be, in sync, So, and usually he is the capstone of that group. There's a body soul, and then there's different levels of all this experience, and so being the capstone of Quetzalcoatl. Now this is going a little off topic, but I just want to show you the bigger picture, and that is, like, for instance, Thoth is one of the 5 souls of Enoch, and Enoch and Quetzalcoatl are very closely connected. He's never given me all the picture of that, but just to say that when you're dealing with a particular soul in a particular culture, I mean, you're looking at the culture, Quetzalcoatl, he's a rock star of the Aztecs, and then Kukulkan of the Mayans and all of that. But actually, the projection of that energy from this 5-soul format, in the 5-soul format of Enoch, they're very interrelated. And that's why it happened in those both places. We could go on and say in this batch and that batch. I'm just giving you an example, So when we're looking at something like Quetzalcoatl, and you're looking at this journey and everything, just be aware that there's so much more going on outside of the cultural picture of it. The cultural picture is important, but there is always more.
Good.
That's really interesting, Maya. And I'd like to ask a couple of questions. I'm not sure whether you'll be able to answer these. These are kind of more technical, I guess. But so if I understood that correctly, Thoth was one of 5 souls who was able to channel the avatar that we would call Quetzalcoatl. Is that another way of saying it?
Yes.
That's really fascinating because, you know, what we're perhaps learning as we grow and evolve and expand ourselves is that we can also be channels and conduits like you are for Thoth or for other avatars, other ascended beings, other types of, including our own higher self. We're still learning about our own higher selves. We have no idea, really, many of us, the extent of our own higher selves and how they connect with beings like Thoth or Quetzalcoatl. So I find that really, really interesting. And I would love to hear more about the connection between Enoch and Quetzal. And you're absolutely right. As me and Bella journeyed around Mexico last year on the trail of Quetzal, and at the time we were also looking at a possible overlay that was put on Quetzal, possibly from some of our Anunnaki ancestors, possibly even Enki, who, you know, for a while we weren't sure about whether there was a manifestation of Quetzal. But according to the teachings of Thoth, that's not correct. Maybe Enki was an impersonator. So we have all of this kind of debris that we have to wade through to try and get to the truth of the situation, which of course the Spanish also did quite a good job of removing. So anything that you can expand on in that would be really, really interesting.
Yeah,
Good.
Anyway, well, just a little bit, but according to Thoth, Iniki was really basically a good guy. I mean, he had his problems, you know, he had to wake up, call, whatever, but he was a pretty good guy, but he was not Thoth. They're trying to say that Thoth was Iniki and Iniki was a bad guy. Iniki was not a bad guy. He had some problems, but he worked them out and he came to the rescue. And he was not Thoth. The 2 souls are not the same thing at all. And Thoth is not layered with Iniki or anything like that. I just want to make that clear because so many people say, oh, not so many, but I mean, I've heard it. Thoth is Iniki and Iniki was this terrible Anunnaki person and blah, blah. And one of the things that Thoth brings up very strongly to me, their keynotes, and I don't want to get off on things, but I think this is important for your travel and your group. There are keynotes that are used to take people, to herd them down a belief system, what you call a consensual reality, that creates a little fractured timeline that's a box canyon. So it calls them a box canyon. And they herd them down the box canyon. They don't use complete lies to do that. People can see through complete lies. They use truth that's injected like a poison pill.
Yep. Like an 80-20 situation where maybe the majority of it is true, but there is that portion that is inverted.
So one of the things is about the Anunnaki, and I won't go into it all. I have a short video, and I'm going to make a probably a longer one later. But anyway, you know, they were the bad guys. Yes, they did things they shouldn't have done, and they messed with our genetics and blah. But the New Age community or whatever has made them into rock stars. Some bad rock stars, but rock stars, and they have a very small role in this whole historical energy picture of planet Earth. They made their havoc, but there were other bad guys too. And then also, you know, but the good ones, the what he calls the shepherd race, like Thoth, Coddle, whatever, the shepherd race, Osiris, are out of this group he calls the shepherd race, and they are the Solarians. Well, we're Solarians probably too, a lot of these people watching this, but they were the Illumin Solarians, you know, the solar lords and out of that group. And they were the ones that helped us become the good, that we're under the good shepherding, you know. I say become because we all have faults and stuff, but I'm talking about good versus evil, just quite frankly, because there is such a thing. But it's not good people versus evil people. It's good energies and consciousness versus a negative lost from source that becomes the bad guys, but it's not really, you know. But there is evil, and it controls the mechanism of these avatar experiences, and persons who have become so lost from that strain that they can't, you know, or they're not recalibrating themselves and bringing it back. I don't want to get off on that, but the point is that as we work with the energies like you're working with on this journey, you know, anytime you open the door to receive all this light and beauty and help people, there's always going to be this little infiltration of negative stuff. However, you know, calling upon the light-bearing beings, the Solarian lords in this, Quetzalcoatl, the 5 souls of him, you know, but especially the Thoth one, because he's the capstone and he registers through the whole picture. You know, you call upon that, and you call upon the protection of that energy field around the group. And then you can also add, we do this in quantum, my group, Quantum Logic Interactive. Thoth says, call upon the omni frequency. I think I'm dinging over here. Let me turn something off here. Yes, I am. Sorry about that. He says, call upon the omni. Make that your catchword. You assign that word to saying a frequency that is all expansive, omnidirectional, and continual until you decide maybe you don't want it focused there anymore. You can say, okay, switch vibrations. But just say, I call upon the omni frequency of protection and energy from the Solarian lords, the sun lords, guiding this journey. And that's going to cover Quetzalcoatl, but it's going to cover others you don't even know are there, you know.
Wow.
Maybe, you know,
So
because
I have a question. So Quetzalcoatl or Kukulkan is depicted as the feather serpent, but also as a white bearded man. So what do you have on that? What is the connection? Is it a hybrid shapeshifter? What is going on there, Maia?
It is just like Thoth is sometimes project pictured as an ibis-headed god or a baboon, you know. These are archetypal frequencies. You see, there's the archetype and there's the persona, the person, the avatar person. And usually the avatar, I'm sorry, I'm getting mixed up. The archetype precedes the person. The person comes in and fits into the archetype, and maybe it gives the archetype name, but the archetype is an over-encompassing energy field, and then it sends, or however you want to call it, God sends the persona in an incarnated body to fill that role. Right. Now, then after the fact, after this avatar leaves, there can be other souls that are assuming a sub role. They become Quetzalcoatlans or Thothians, you know, under that frequency. They're not the first one, you know, the big guy, but they are under that vibration, like the priestesses of Isis became, you know, the mantle of the, you know, it's a lineage, yes, comes out of that. So, but you have an archetype too, and the archetype is often represented in various ways that the human being connects to, because archetypes are born out of consensual reality. They are a divine frequency of some kind, but they become an archetype when human beings go, oh, we feel this energy, we're going to focus on it. Let's call it something. Oh, let's represent it by a turtle, or you know, and they keep that frequency going, and that's what creates the dynamic, you see. So, that's why there's the serpent, you know, and then there's the real person. And yes, he was a white person from European, you know. He's never given me the whole story about this entity that later was being called these names, you know, Quetzalcoatl and Kukulkan. But I do know that he has said that much. And he had a lot of star genetics. So he wasn't just some guy off the street in Europe somewhere, you know. he had a resume, you know.
All of this is absolutely fascinating, Maia, for lots and lots of reasons. And I think that what we're starting to get into here in this particular topic is how, as physical beings, we can hold a variety of archetypes as depicted, I think, excellently in the tarot pack, but also how we can be vessels for temporary walk-ins of avatars who maybe come and go. Doesn't necessarily mean, if, let's just say, you know, that, well, like with you and Thoth, for example, Thoth comes in, you harness the energy, you are able to channel it, but it doesn't mean that you are Thoth, right? And in the same way that maybe we channel other beings sometimes, or plant beings, you know, we channel plants. Doesn't mean that we're Dandelion, but it means that we have a connection with Dandelion where he can speak through us. So I think this is something that we all have an ability with, but what you're getting at, which I think is really interesting, is the lineage of the white wizards. And we can say that the Merlins are another one of these types of mystery schools, and maybe even Quetzal is a type of a Merlin, because their energy feels pretty synonymous to me. But do you have something to say about that?
Because Merlin was Thoth was one of either the 3 souls or the 5 souls of Merlin. Thoth was one, and I think Germain was another one of the souls of Merlin.
So Maia, you were telling us about how Merlin is also connected to Thoth.
Yes, Thoth is the capstone soul of Merlin, which is either 3 or 5. I believe it's 5 soul connection. And I believe that Saint Germain, actually, the person Saint Germain, is another one of the Merlin fivefoldness. So what we're looking at here is, and not that Thoth was the head of every soul that was important, but he has a prestige here. And the reason for that is that his position in this whole consciousness movement is one of networking. See, as we think of him as the scribe. Well, if you think of a scribe, the scribe has to bring things together to create the book. He has to bring different aspects of things together. So Thoth is also bringing different aspects of avatar experiences on the earth together. And he's not the only one in many of them. Some of them he is. He's the only one in Thoth Muzurud and Thoth Racemus. But he does connect to quite a few important, shall we say, beings that were involved in creational aspects of this planet, because that's his job, is to connect these fields.
So I like, if you could, Maia, then start connecting how Thoth and all of these beings have connected to the planetary grid. And I like to, while you think about that and how we're going to thread this, is for people to start thinking about their multidimensional selves. When we have an astrological sign, we are embodying some archetype. With the galactic signature, we're embodying another archetype. When you identify your galactic codes through the stellar nations or any of these cosmic information, you're also accessing your unicorn self, your dragon self, your great feline, your lion self. So all of the time we could be doing that. And in fact, this is part of what we're going to be doing in the path of the Jaguar, because at certain points we need to embody or access those codes to achieve certain things. So this is the kind of conversation we want to have with people, and we'll get to share more during the path of the Jaguar. But let's start taking the conversation to the grid and Quetzalcoatl. What is the connection, and Thoth?
Yes. Okay. There's 2 kinds of grids, according to what I'm receiving, of course, on the planet. One is a natural kind of grid formation that Gaia herself just, creates. And the other is these grids that have been established by master builders. That's what the original from the Sunbow, here we go, Sun again, the Solarians, from the Sunbow clan, and they came and created these certain grids to start. Well, after they left, it's not like those were the only ones. They created it's kind of like, grow your own grid. So you plant the first grid, and the grid says, oh, okay, I'm going to create the second grid over here because it's necessary now. So we're going to have this one, So that's how it began. But, these grids grow when they're supposed to. And there's certain timers that are programmed into the field, you see, that respond to us. Because we are the next budding Elohim. When I say us, I mean all light-bearing souls that show up. Just show up. You don't have to be perfect. I've said this many times, but I just want to say it again. You don't have to be perfect. You just show up and you say, I know I made some mistakes, but here I am again. And I serve the light. I serve the light. Even, I've dusted myself off. Here I am again. Give me another assignment. I'll do better this time. And so that kind of energy fuels the association between these, I guess you could call it, well, there's the Elohim, but there's the Sun Lords and these solar frequencies. They are the team. I don't know, that's not a very good word, but the team of the Elohim. They aren't the Elohim, but they are the team that is guiding and focusing on this, because the original Elohim were beyond any incarnational being or source of whatever, the entities beyond our imagination, let's say. But guess what? Now, and this happens in other worlds as well, the original Elohim that starts creating these formations, then they get to a point and they say, okay, Earth humans, it's time for you to be the Elohim. Now you get to take the role. It's not in exactly the same way, but it is an Elohimic role. And we're getting ready to take that role so that we can move from, as many of you heard me say, from a world system 1, which is entropy, to a world system 2, which is syntropy. That's putting it very simply, but that's what it is. So the creator, too many words in my head here, the sun lords who are facilitating all of this, they have asked Gaia's permission, of course, they're in sync with the Gaia harmonic, to create these overlays, these grids, because these grids that are overlaid are not artificial. They resonate with Gaia herself. She says, okay, I'll take that in. I'll connect to that. You know, it's not like some ant pile that just says, well, I'm going to build all over this place here. No, it's synchronized with the breath of Gaia. So it's not unnatural, but it's not the original organic grid. It's one that has been, brought in from the higher celestial, from the higher focus. So that's kind of what this is about. And that grid is communicating. It's a community. These systems, these grids communicate to humanity. It's not just about, what is a grid? You go there and you get to feel some good energies and you talk to the grid and you do your little exercise and you go home. No, that's good, to get in touch with it and go to a sacred place. Of course it's good. It activates. We'll talk about that later. But I'm just saying that's not the end of the story. When everybody goes home and says, boy, that was a good trip, man, I did this and I saw the angels and blah, and said, but that's over now. I got to go take the kids to soccer practice, and it doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way because you are changed. You have absorbed the grid within you, unless you cast it out. You have a choice of doing that. And it's always there for you to reenact, but not in the old way, not the way you just did, but in the new way, because it's always growing. Just like I said, grow your own grid. It grows within and it builds the consciousness. And then you go on some other trip in the other part of the world. Well, you already had the Jaguar grid with you, let's say. You take it over there and you plug it in with Stonehenge or whatever. You see, it has this circulation.
Yeah. So we could even think of it like we are supercomputers, which are upgrading the software. Every time we do one of those things, then our software goes up to another notch and then the next newest version, and we can integrate and continue to work from there.
Exactly, because we are the grids we're searching for.
Exactly.
That brings me to the aerial packs, which Thoth calls Isis I. It's a dynamic, and I wish I had a picture of it here, but think of a triangle, inverted triangle, and here's the triangle going up with a point here, and here's the triangle coming down with the point there, and they cross like the Vesica Pisces, they cross a little bit, and then there's a bar energy that comes out, or a waveform out of the horizontal. And it does other things too, but that's the base. And then it starts moving and it does all these things. Well, you cannot have a portal. And of course, every grid relies on portals.
Yeah.
Natural or ones that have been created, as I already spoke about, the grids from the higher celestial. And you can't have a grid without a portal. And you really can't have a portal without a grid. It's kind of the same. Now, we have grids within us. We like to think of them as acupoints so that it's connect, but it's connecting grids in us. And we wouldn't be alive without an areopax inside us. We have that in us that's operating. And so, when you're doing your grid work, when you're going on a journey like this path of the Jaguar, that grid starts going, I'm getting this, I'm feeling this. And then the areopax starts reciprocating and saying, okay, let's process this. Let's open these portals. And the portal that's being opened is in you, and what you're simulating and how you're working with that energy. Yeah. So it's part of the evolutionary field that goes beyond. See, there's two evolutionary, I don't know how far you want me to take this, but there's two evolutionary fields, basic ones. And I'm sure there's subfields to it, but the two basic ones, one is the physical, here we are as human beings, we've evolved through certain stages, but you see there's a problem with that one. And that is that from the lotus reality did not do any evolving. It actually did a little de-evolving because they came down the lotus stem, the consciousness field, into the earth directly. And almost all of us have had some relationship with that field, okay? Then what they came down to work with was already kind of there. And that was the one that was the Neanderthal, this and da. And so when the time tsunami of Atlantis happened, it's a long story, but when that happened, it broke that circuitry so that everything we see now traces us back to the Neanderthals. Because all the we can find a few things, underwater pyramids, these are great, things, but we really can't, a lot of it just left. It left the frequency zone. Everything that we created is we came in not as apes, but as, complete beings, not various, levels of spirituality, but complete beings. Most of that's gone. We have a little patches left that we'll find here and there, And when they find that footprint they found that said is 100 million years old, and there's a person's bare foot in the ground, they're saying, oh my God, a person lived here 100 million years ago. Well, that's probably possible, but it's also possible that what they're finding there is one leftover print from this other grid, and you can't match it with the time sequences because they're not similar. You see, it gets complicated, so I don't want to go off.
It gets a little complicated when we talk about timelines and different grids. So I want you to take us a little bit to something that you mentioned in one of your videos about the maiden matrix, or it's like a feminine kind of grid that came to life only in 2005.
Or 5 or something like that. I can't remember.
If you can give us a little bit about that, because I feel that as the return of the goddess energy somehow.
Well, and the fact that the maiden grid was formed out of, the royal point, ROIL, of the planet, which is the Hawaiian Islands, which was, of course, that's the remnant of Lemuria, Mu, so it all kind of together because that's where the lotus came down, the vibration of that. So the maiden grid is opening. It was time for that grid to form as she protects the spiritual center of her gravity. By that I mean, if you take the royal point down to the center of the earth, which is of course a hollow field resonating in a slightly different dimension, you have what Thoth calls the central sun atoma of the planet. So that's her womb. So the maiden grid is really Gaia in her most expressive internal form, reaching up and creating a little halo frequency on the surface of the earth around her point of entry, which is the royal point. Because when things go south, although really they're just going up, that royal point is going to go, and that's going to happen. But that's Mama saying, okay, birthing time, Meanwhile, the maiden grid protects that field. It's very vulnerable right now. The closer we get to what Thoth calls LP40, light principle 40, the flashpoint, where we move from a world system 1 to 2, the closer we get to that, the more sensitive the royal point is. And we don't want it going off too early, right? So Mama kind of keeps a protective field around that. Now, I didn't actually say that in the video I made on that because some of this is coming through right now. As I said, it's not all old stuff, but my video on it is very informative. It has a lot of things about that. But in relationship to what you're asking me, Bella, I wanted to include that part to it.
Right. So let's keep on talking about temple doors. Let's explain to people who is temple doors and what is the connection to all of these we're talking about.
Well, she plays a role, and I brought her up in a Substack I did recently, and I gave you a link to that Substack because to share with your audience, because underneath it, there's layered a lot of these other things, the grids, the planetary grids and whatever, so they can just follow the stream down and get a lot of the other things in the videos, etc. But she, that was what I consider to be a past life of mine. And make a short story, because you can read the longer story, I didn't know about temple doors. I was receiving about this lifetime of a young woman in Tibet who, who had a very interesting situation. And I thought, well, she's not entirely Tibetan. What is she, And I tell the story about that. And then when I found out about the myth of temple doors, the Mayan who took the first migration from, Yucatan, because she was trying to get away from the bad guys that were doing the sacrifices and stuff. She was a high Mayan, and she was taking people into the other country. I realized it was the same person. And then I began to see how she came from Tibet to the Yucatan, because they were linked. They were connecting, and they were genetically connecting. And her whole journey and how that took place.
So if people haven't seen the previous video, sorry, let me just recap here a little bit. So the high Mayans are connected to the Pleiades. And now we're talking about how some of these high Mayans left the Yucatan at the time that there was a lot of inversion and sacrifice, and horrible things came to happen in that area. So some of the priests and high Mayans, which I call the galactic Mayans, they left and headed towards North America, which is Arizona, New Mexico, Texas, Colorado, right? And so what you're talking about is one of these high priestesses.
Right. And I just did a video on the Chaco Canyon, and I mentioned them because she seeded that place with the migration there. Yeah, so it's kind of all connected. She didn't play an enormous role, but she did have a role in bringing the energies, starting that flow. Then, of course, others came after her and did that as well. The migrations at that time were all divinely guided. The migrations today are in chaos.
Yeah.
And that's not a make wrong on people needing to find a place to live and exist that's better than what they had, but that's not what's happening here. I won't go off on that, but I'll just say by comparison, it's not divinely guided, and it could be. You don't need temple doors to do that. And this is what we're having to resolve. Not just that, but that's the whole idea of the energy of the field of consciousness that we're living in now. We're coming to a place we must resolve it. For those who are willing to resolve it, who show up, and the other ones that say, not having it, well, they're going to have to go off on their own little experience. But that doesn't mean that they have to keep us from doing what we need to do. I say we, the collective whole, who are showing up, basically. Yes.
Good. Do you have any questions, David?
Yeah, a lot.
There is so much.
We've moved on beyond some of the topics.
There is always something. Every time we talk about something, there is a new one and a new one.
I mean, there's a lot that there were still questions I had in relation to how multiple avatars come together to create archetypes, and how really like Thoth is something of a master alchemist. We can say even a soul cook, bringing different pieces of other archetypes to get together to create even newer Merlins or Quetzals. Or I somehow see these beings as being a conglomerate of different energies, different archetypes brought together specifically to create a new type of archetype. So I think that's very interesting. Do you have anything to say on that?
Yes, I have two videos. One is called one is called Going Forth with the Gods. That's on the archetypes. And the other one is the Solarians and the new archetypes. No, the Solarians and the new avatars. So one is Going Forth with the Gods, and the other is the Solarians and the avatars. And they address a lot of what probably your questions are. I don't know if they address all of them.
We'll put the links to those in the show notes, but that was a little, sorry, that was a bit previous in the conversation, so I was still mulling on that. But what's caught my attention, and I think is perhaps just worth sharing with our audience a little bit, is we're talking about the Elohim. Now, there is a particular strand of our, we can say, alternative culture out there that have identified the Elohim, particularly the fallen Elohim, as being the elite culture that is somewhat we might call the Kabbalah or whatever these days. Now, what I understand is that there is the original Elohim that you talked about, the original, we can say, beings of El, and then there are the fallen angels, the Elohim.
The imposters.
The imposters, right? So I just, I want to there's a question I want to ask you specifically on this. So What I'm understanding is that that's a separate topic all in itself, but just to put that into the awareness of any of our audience who do probably watch some of the other channels that we watch, who've been talking a lot about the Elohim cult worship, which is really, I think, the worshipping aspect of Enki's son, who might be called Baal or Marduk even in some places. So that's a whole different conversation. But what I want to come to is the thing about grids, because what we understand is, yes, there's the original Earth natural grid. Then there's the grids that architects, we can say energetic architects, avatars, beings came in and started to co-create harmoniously, sympathetically with Mother Earth, I would imagine, to create temple points on nodal points, okay? That's my understanding. But then we have these fallen Elohim beings who probably assist in the creation of the matrix or the anti-grid, with which the Normans and these other beings, the church, they plonked down their churches on top of these nodal points and transformed from Druid sacred circles into antichrist imagery. So I just wanted to put that into the mix there and get your opinion on all of that, because I think that that's somehow also part of what happened in Atlantis, now coming to be finalized, played out, concluded with the removal of the anti-grid and the recitation, remembrance of the harmonious co-creative grid. Does that make sense? Did I make that clear enough?
It makes sense. Yeah. One thing you see, the negative art beings that are, you know, messing with us, so from the grays to the whatevers, they all go, oh, these people rely on language. They rely on words to communicate with one another. That's interesting. We'll just take some of these words and we'll make them that. And we'll take some of these words and we'll make them that. And we'll just put them out on YouTube and we'll put them out on Facebook and TikTok. And then we'll get everybody saying, oh, those are the Elohim. Oh, those are the, you know, none of these guys that are negative are Elohim. Elohim are creator lords. These other guys didn't do any creating but their own, you know, little negative circles of nothing. Okay. Let's don't make them too important. Yeah, they cause some problems, but you know, we're giving them too much power by saying, oh, they did this and they did that, you know. So what Thoth uses a biblical term, and he's using it as a term, Nephilim, to describe not all. Some Nephilim are okay, but some of the fallen ones he prefers to call Nephilim because they are not creator lords. Unless you want to say, if I created a little pea on top of a spoon, then I'm a creator lord, you know, because that's what they created, you know, and it's not enough. It's not enough to qualify them as an Elohim. So I just want to get that clear. So, oh gosh, let's see, where were we? I'm sorry, Davyd, I lost my train of thought.
So look, I think that's a really important point. And also I love the expression that you used, or that came from top of the box canyons. Now, I feel like, I mean, this is again, not necessarily the topic or the scope of this conversation, but particularly our closest upstream ancestors that we can say are probably the Anunnaki in the cosmic story of beings that have come to the planet. They're probably some of the more recent ones, not the only ones, but some of the more recent ones. They created lots of these box canyons because they perceive themselves to be God-like without actually being like God. And so I see that what we have here is this whole kind of fall into physicality by certain beings who then pretend, and you know, we can see this even with AI technology, with computer technology. At its best, it is a facsimile of original natural quantum technology. In fact, everything that is created in that way with AI and with tech is a facsimile of what is actually naturally available already. And that's part of the hijacking that creates the God scenarios. Oh, we created this, we created the Matrix. Yes, all of that. So those beings are powerful enough to do that and to enslave us for the last 4,000 years or more. So they have some power, but their trick is to create the illusion that they are the gods, not the original creator gods like the El or these other cosmic beings. So I just wanted to put it into that context.
They're like hermit crabs. Oh, let's move into that shell over there, and then we're going to look really cool, you know, because the shells, like they say, oh, the Anunnaki created Stonehenge. Oh, the Anunnaki created. No, they didn't create any of those things. They moved in. I don't think they moved into Stonehenge, but they moved into these places, and they said it's ours now. I have two videos called on the reparations. Those calls them the reparations. I have two different ones. You might remind me, and I'll send you a playlist with these videos. And this is a fascinating topic. I won't go into it all here. The videos cover it a lot. But when the Anunnaki messed with this, that was the last messing that we got, was from the Anunnaki. Some time later, I'm not good at numbers, the Solarian Sun Lords came back When I say came back, I said, well, Thoth, why did you leave? I mean, you left right in the middle of the Anunnaki thing. Well, why did you leave us? He said, we didn't leave you. You left us. See, the vibration. When we, I say planet Earth, human beings opened the door. He says that we opened the door to Anunnaki. He's never told me exactly how, but they didn't just come in.
Idea.
So I want to hear that. So they opened the door. They come on in, and they came in, and then our vibration started going down, and they couldn't stay. The solar lords couldn't stay. But after that, they were able to come back for the reparations. And they had several periods of reparations where they came back. They helped us with our DNA. If they hadn't done that, we'd be like this now, So they helped us with the DNA. They helped us with a lot of things. But the cool thing is, the last video talks about the reparation that's going on now. He calls it the last reparation. He says it's different than the others because the sun lords aren't walking among us, and taking us into the temples and stuff in the physical, because they can't do that right now, because we're not ready for that. But we are in a reparation period, and this is the last reparation before the ascension. So I just, throw that in there.
So I think one of the ways that they were able to do what they've done for thousands of years, and now we're getting away from this control issue, is first of all, they did genetic manipulation. They control time, because they are the ones that took time from the fourth dimension and then created the Sumerian and Babylonian time that we've been using. So that is a way of manipulating our reality. That's what we're going around the Mexico and many different places, because we want to anchor the new time. So genetic manipulation, time, ritual sacrifices, and all of these horrible blood things that they brought, plus rewriting history and doing timeline switches where they put themselves as the gods, the creators, and created a bunch of religions so that people would be confused. So confusion and inversion was obviously one of the main keys on how they were able to do that. And that's why we need to be aware of this, not to be fearful, but because we don't want any of these to keep on happening.
Exactly. And also, of course, then there was the time tsunami that Atlantis accidentally created because they didn't listen to the other guys that were saying, don't do that. and they created the time tsunami, and that just fractured, that created a complete fracture away from the Rana time wave. The Rana time wave is not a timeline. It is a frequency of the universal's continuum. And we used to be with it. But then when the time tsunami happened, we were fractured from it.
Yes.
And time went all over the place.
And that is part of the mission, guys. We are trying to repair time. And the reparation is bringing back number 13, bringing back the feminine, bringing back the natural cycles, bringing back the Fibonacci sequence or golden ratio, which is the natural cycle that the whole universe works in.
Yes, exactly.
Right. You know what, Maia, I want to ask you a question in a second about the time tsunami, because I think that's really, really interesting. But also you just alluded to something earlier on, which I think is interesting, that I've pondered on quite a few times myself, which is where we get these anomalies in the so-called linear time. So we get these footprints that are supposedly millions of years old, which to me in my body medicine doesn't feel correct. So when I started to strip that apart, it came more to what Bella was just talking about, which is timeline, not even switching, we can say splicing, where they cut timelines, stuck them together again. Like with the most classic one that's easy to understand is the Spanish invasion of the Americas. That's a very, very clear piece of splicing that happened there. And we don't really know what existed prior to the Spanish. Me and Bella have been talking and thinking perhaps there was a civilization that maybe was tens of millions, hundreds of millions, that covered all of Mexico, that's almost been completely obliterated. Now, to our current
even down to South America, even down to Peru,
even
Colombia,
into Texas.
Peru. So
one of the things that we've been tracking is the possibility of this obliteration period that happened prior to the Spanish turning up. And there is a lot of evidence that supports that, possibly an obliteration from space, maybe meteorites, maybe weapons, we don't know. But the question then becomes, how and why did that happen? And what actually was existing previous to the Spanish turning up? Because we really have no idea. All we've got left is what's here. And even that is anomalous with these footprints and stuff. So with all of that in mind, and with the time tsunami, can you speak to any of that?
Yes. When you have a time tsunami, anywhere, what happens is that all of these threads that come together to weave this beautiful tapestry, they're just ruptured.
Right.
And that means that, let's say we're talking here and there happens to be a time tsunami. Well, you go outside and you'd see another city, another place, another time. You say, well, I just was out there this morning. It's my backyard, but look, it's different now. And you'd be sitting where you are now. Maybe you'd survive it. It's hypothetical, but but you'd be in a different place. You'd be on top of a mountain or something. So a lot of these, I know some things are buried under silt and mud and, destroyed. And, there were comets and there was the Nephelimic Wars that Thoth mentions a little bit. But putting all that aside, the big one is the time tsunami, because it just rearranges the whole scene. So all of these places you're saying in Mexico that just seem to be gone, maybe they're there, okay, but we can't find them because we're not on the right time thing, see? Because all of that was just messed up, like throwing the dice and just taking it apart. But it's there somewhere. We just have to find it. That's why I love
Maia, when we see the physical blueprints and then we see the overlay blueprints. And me and Bella have seen this in many places, right? Here in Mexico.
Including our place there in El Molino.
Right,
in Mexico.
yeah. We're living basically in the remnants of a pyramid that doesn't look to be here anymore, and that even the locals have forgotten about, and has almost been wiped from time. And we look around the lake here in Pátzcuaro and we can see many pyramids in the landscape, as yet unrecognized. But if we go into the blueprint, the etheric blueprints, I'm like, oh my gosh, there's not just one or two pyramids, there's hundreds here. And this is not
same happened here in Texas. When we
Right.
were driving around Texas, we found a pyramid, but then the other ones started to show up as well. So there is a lot to be discovered yet.
There is, because also, you see, as we approach LP40, light principle 40, when the flashpoint occurs, and there's a lot that happens before, and then we're going to the pyramids, radius platform, and all of this other stuff. But even so, right now, where we're talking now, we are in the lip of all of that. We're in the movement of it. And Thoth told me years ago that, somebody, when it really gets going, somebody be washing dishes, look out the window while they're washing the dishes, and they see a dinosaur standing there. And they go, and the dinosaur would disappear. Well, they weren't illusion. It wasn't an illusion. The timelines are starting to try to come back and to grow. He said, but it'll seem chaotic at first because people will see things they think can't be there, and then they disappear. That's, it's already beginning to happen. But when it gets through that sort of awkward stage, it's going to be beautiful, because it's only going to call upon not a dinosaur that's going to eat your little your baby off, but an angel, or your grandmother who died 20 years ago. Unicorns,
or the white jaguar. Let's talk about the white.
Hold on, before we get to white jaguar, I just want to conclude on this, because this is fascinating, this topic, and my mind has gone off into all kinds of time explosions. But Maia, so if I'm understanding this correctly, one of the major things that happened here in this realm was the fall of Atlantis. Was the time tsunami part of that? And do you feel, if that's correct, was the time tsunami initiated from the future by these fallen beings to create the chaos that we have now been living in? So we're in a discordant realm. Is that part of the plan?
It's an interesting thought, and I'm not going to say it's not true, but I'm not receiving that. I'm saying that because I'm looking at the history of what Thoth has told me. See, he says, just very briefly, there was a planet in our birthing universe and whatever, which is Orion, in the nebula of Orion, in the trapezium is the birthing zone of this universe. And you say, well, that's impossible because the universe is huge. It's got all this. But see, we're talking about another reality. We're always looking linear. Oh, how far away that is. No. That's not what he sees. So anyway, let's just take it off the face of it, that Orion is the birthing zone of this universe. So Rigel is where the souls decided to come here in this node, because there's a node where this planet is. It's rather special. I'm sure there's many of them, billions of them out there, but I mean, it's not every planet has sitting on a node like we are. So we're on this node, and Rigel said, hey, we're going to scan. Oh, this is a good place. We need to recreate an energy field so we can evolve what destroyed us with the planet Atlantis. Of course, it didn't really have that name. They destroyed this planet because they just went all amok and blew, and we got to repair that. or we're going to go bad too. So we're going to do that on this other zone that connects to us. So here we are. And that's when they created the lotus and the whole thing, and it came down, you know. So if you consider that the souls of Atlantis, or I'm speaking generally, some of the souls of Atlantis said, okay, we volunteer, we got to have, you know, we're part of that, we got to undo it, we got to make something better. We're going to come down with you guys again. So then they wind up on the continent of Atlantis. So plenty of souls in Atlantis that had nothing to do with that, but we're talking about the ones that did. And some of the ones that did were upright citizens, and they did what they needed to do to help the planet. Some of them went, oh, you know, this kind of feels good. It feels powerful. You know, we have extra power because we brought it into our being from the grids before the planet was destroyed, and now we have that power. And you know, I don't think it's such a good idea to give that power away, do you? You know, and so that's kind of what set that up. Yeah. So you could say that Atlantis is coming, the planet Atlantis is speaking from the future, because when we're looking at linear time, I mean, I'm just saying, you know, there's a lot of ways to look at this. I don't want to just close the door to what you're saying, but I'm just giving you the picture that I have been given about the planet Atlantis and how it progressed to this. And, you know, to give you just an idea of how mixed up things got, Noah, who was an Atlantean, good guy, Atlantean, he knew this thing was coming. A lot of people did, because they saw the writing on the wall. They didn't be psychic. They saw what they were going to do, and they go, oh, that's not going to work. And so he took his ships, I think there were 3, and he was taking genetic material to, and you know, out of the zone. Well, he got caught up in the tsunami. So his 3 ships rode the crest, and they wound up in 4,000 and something. They wound up, but the flood that's talking about, it's one flood that wound up in several different places. So you say, oh, there was this flood, and there was that flood, and there was that one flood that went, and it just went into all these different zones of time, of our time. So that just gives you an example of how messed up it all got.
I think it makes a lot of sense, because when we take it back to Orion as being the beginning of it, you know, you need to be aware that there have been many galactic wars, at least 2 galactic wars that are very well known, and they have happened. They're called the Orion Galactic Wars. And what I've understood about it is that in Orion are the portals to different parts of the universe. So what you're saying about Rigel makes absolute sense, about how from that point you can access the rest of the universe. So it would make sense that there have been so many issues around there with this group. And when you go and travel around Mexico or even Egypt, you see the reflection from the stars, from Orion, on the pyramids and on different sides. So it happens in many places, but specifically in Egypt and in Mexico is very clear. I think in China as well. So that's all to do with the grid as well. So how do we start the repairing of the grid and time, knowing that there is a connection there as well between Orion, Atlantis, and all of this?
Well, we need to kind of look at Osiris for a minute. The archetype Osiris, who had an embodiment, physical fellow, you know, but let's look at the archetype more, and understanding that Osiris as an archetype reflects Orion, Osiris. They're a unit there. And you can even find some of that reference in actual Egyptian ancient texts. Not quite like I'm saying it, but you know, it's there. So, and the soul of Osiris, who's a highly evolved soul, up there with Thoth, maybe even beyond, you know, embodied that form so he could work through take these divine energies and play them out in certain ways for the planetary good. So, Orion, Thoth has said to me that every molecule, every universe, every star system, because there's a lot of star systems that have put their imprint on the planet Earth, some not so good and some wonderful. I mean, Orion, you know, Rigel and all that's not the only one. It's just that they were the ones that created this situation. But all of these things that we see have a half-light and a full light, an orotronic half-light and a metatronic full light. So you can point to anything and you can say, oh, that's bad. And if you go down into the lowest level of the Orotron, you're going to find some grungy stuff. I don't care what universe it's in, galactic. If you move up the scale, and the higher you get to the Metatron, and you get into the full light spectrum, you've got heaven, you've got the most region. So Orion has had some stuff happen, but that is a tiny, tiny, tiny little fraction of what Orion is, because it holds the trapezium. It is the birthplace of divine consciousness for this universal spectrum. But look what happened to Jesus, I mean, so there's always the little wolves, I don't mean to make bad on wolves, but, traveling in behind, trying to get the good guy. So, but from this perspective that I receive, yes, there's been stuff, even in Rigel, they had the Atlantis thing happen, but we need to keep our eye on the prize. And the prize is that we come from a very divine, universal spectrum, literally in effulgence, spilling out of the trapezium of Orion. And he's never told me exactly how the Eye of Ra, which is the central point, got torn. But obviously there was something wrong there, that caused a tear in the Eye of Ra. Although I feel it was more of a universal, much larger than good guys, bad guys playing around with. It's something much bigger than that. But that's why we have the capstone, again, we're using terms, on the Eye of Ra to protect it. And we have these beautiful beings, these lion-headed Syrian beings that are the guardians of this capstone. I have videos called the healing of the stars that addresses all of this. And so, as we look at the scenario, it's important to, we need to see the whole picture. We're not just talking about little rainbows and unicorns, but in any case, whether we're talking about Orion or in any of these places that give us such fullness and light, there's always going to be somebody who says, oh yeah, but look at this. There's this little spot down here. We got to focus on that little dirty spot. No. Yeah, there was a dirty spot. Let's wipe it off. Okay, now let's continue here. Let's go with
the bigger picture. I think I don't know. We probably won't take this into this conversation, but I think we need to mention the Christ consciousness, maybe as a whole conversation, because it's also connected to all of these. But for now, we need to start wrapping up, and we want to mention the white Jaguar lady, which is fascinating because it's connected to the path of the Jaguar and the Mayans and everything we've been talking about for the last two sessions.
Okay, I don't have a whole lot of information on her, but she is an archetypal presentation of Sekhmet, and she appeared to a queen, or whatever you call it, of the Mayans in an ancient time, in what later became Chichen Itza. So that pyramid is either completely gone or buried somewhere in that area that she was operating within. And she didn't know anything about Sekhmet at the time. She was in Maya land, but she called her the White Jaguar lady, and she wanted to build a temple to her. But it so happened that there was some going back and forth between the Mayans and the ancient Egyptians at that time. And one Egyptian group that came over, there was a fellow named Tuhawk, and Tuhawk said, hey, I got an idea. I think Jaguar lady is Sekhmet. And he told her about Sekhmet, and they kind of, conversed with the stars, and they said, yeah, that's who that is. And so he kind of helped her to understand that. And then she, built a whole temple to White Jaguar lady, but with the knowledge that she was also, this entity of Sekhmet. So if you look at White Jaguar lady, and I'm thinking I might do a video on her and ask those to give me some more information. She, would have been an aspect of Sekhmet that was very much in touch with the dynamic of why we had Mayans and Aztecs and Olmecs and all of these people in their unusual cultures, sometimes very dramatically not so good at the end, but they all started out well, well, the early ones did,
Yeah.
And I think Sekhmet is the reconciler. And people are kind of scared of her. The Egyptians are really scared of her. When I was over in Egypt, we had a wonderful young man. He was educated in the U.S., incredibly intelligent young man who was our guide, Egyptian guide. And we went into this little tiny box, granite box with Sekhmet statue, this big over there in, what is the name of the place? I can't remember now. Anyway, we were in there with her. I mean, she took up the whole space, you're standing there like this. And he was in there too, but he was like this, because he was scared of Sekhmet. And some energy happened and it scared him. He ran out. He was sipping tea from the guy that managed the place he was saying, "Oh my God," So, but anyway, so Sekhmet, but she's not a bad character. She's just a reconciler. She's a reconciler. And so it seems that, if you're looking at White Jaguar Lady, and in regard to maybe your journey, she's going to be sitting there, right up front and center, because she's going to be reconciling the energies that might want to infiltrate in, or maybe you have this or that because you're moving to different places and you're all tired because you've been traveling and blah. Those are the ways things get in. And Jaguar Lady sitting there, she's saying, okay, let's tighten up here. Let's get it together and manage that frequency more easily. So I would say call upon White Jaguar Lady,
Wow. Thank you for that. Yeah, we have already been around some of the sites. The one that had a very strong presence of the felines was Monte Alban, which is one of the places where we had amazing experiences. But most of the sites have a temple for the jaguar gods, whether it's the feminine version or the male version, but most of them will have a jaguar, and that's part of what we'll be tracing here.
Yeah. That's great. That's great.
Okay, Davyd, do you want to start the wrapping up? Any final questions?
Yeah, I was just
There's a lot. I mean, every time we talk to Maia, there is so much more that comes up.
Yeah, I mean, I was just reflecting on Sekhmet. I think it's the Temple of Luxor. I don't remember. I've been to the statue too, and it has a powerful presence that's energetic. And I've seen many people have experiences there. And
that was it, Luxor.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of weird. There's more than one Sekhmet statue, I think, but this one is in a little room that's off to the side, and it's kind of a little bit of a strange experience. You've probably been there too, right? And I've also encountered the energy of Sekhmet in medicine journeys, and I can understand why the Egyptian guy is afraid. I've seen Sekhmet absolutely bathed in blood on the field of battle, having destroyed everybody. So she has that destructive Morrigan energy too, but she is also an aspect of the goddess. So she kind of holds birth and death in either hand, as I understand it. So an incredibly powerful archetype. But also what you got me thinking about was this timeline tsunami and these different Noahs with their arcs of genetic material, possibly spewing out and dropping in to other timelines that are then recorded in the Bible, because we have more than one story of a flood. And I'm wondering whether these so-called separate floods are all actually the same flood emanating from a rip in time that then chucked everybody out. And that's why, and this is the other thing, Bella, thinking about Mexico that I'm really now starting to put some pieces together with, is we've got this jumbled up mess with the Mayans, the Aztecas, the Chichimecas, the Olmecs, and the archaeologists have been trying to put this into some sort of
linear time. Yeah,
it doesn't make sense. Every time we look at it, we're like, this is not a linear time situation. However, the time tsunami that could have just spewed a Jumanji box style bunch of stuff out onto other timelines would start to explain some of these anomalies. So I think this is
even the side of Teotihuacan, which is where we're going to be for the 25th of July, which is the day out of time, and is where we started a year ago with the year of the Jaguar, and now we're going to do the wave spell of the Jaguar. And Maia has also been to Teotihuacan, and it's a site that nobody has been able to date. There are some speculation by some archaeologists, but they don't know exactly how far back it is. They can't connect it directly to the Mayans or the Aztecs, so it was there well before they got there.
Right. Yeah, and Maia, what you've just said there, and what Bella's also alluding to, I think actually sums up why we've got so many mysterious sites. Most of the sites of the ancestors seem to have dropped into that space out of somewhere else without any kind of a prior or following on the history. The Incas are another example of this, the Mayans. And it's just like, well, how come the Olmecs are probably the most, I think, clear example. It's like they sort of are put into our linear time with no precursors and no follow-ons and seem to exist in and of themselves without any kind of connection, because the archaeologists are always looking for cultures, like with the Olmecs, they're looking to see where did the Olmecs form from, what was their foundations. And from me and Bella's research, it looks like the Olmecs just appear as from somewhere. So if we've got this kind of time tsunami that throws all of these different pieces from another realm out into this sort of mishmash realm that we live in, it would start to make sense of many things. Easter Island, Nan Madal, the pyramids, South
Let me ask a question to Maia. Do
Yeah.
you feel there is a connection between the Olmecs and the Great Zimbabwe?
That's interesting. I honestly don't know at this moment. I'm not getting anything specific. Guess, surprise, surprise.
Let's leave the question there and see if maybe by next conversation you get something. Who knows?
Thoth has given me information on Zimbabwe, not a lot, but it's a prime place. So yeah, let me be with that for. But I do want to inject just one thing, because you mentioned Yeshua, Christ, the Christ vibration. Guess where all of the tsunami stuff like landed to start the new code? It was at the crucifixion of Jesus. That's where it landed. In other words,
with an eclipse, which is a portal, with an eclipse, exactly. Which are the portals that they know how to use. That is the importance of the astrology together with the Mayan time, because they are super powerful. There are many things that can be done. And we just went through a very powerful eclipse in April, which put us in a higher timeline. So now we get to review what's happening in the other eclipses, because that is the next question. What are we going to do with the ones coming up? The more people that are conscious, the better the reality we get to create.
Exactly. And of course, we have the Lionsgate coming up not long after the end of Lionsgate. But I just received something from Thoth. He showed it to me right now. Okay, so I just got to show it. He showed me a jaguar, and the jaguar reached out and touched something. I didn't see what it was. And when he touched it, the whole paw became wounded. It drew in, and the jaguar started licking its paw. And he said, the jaguar has taken the wound upon him. Now it is time to help him release it. Now, I'm not going to go any further with that right now, but I'm just saying that's what I received. I saw it. It was like he touched something shivering or not quite there. It was here, but not quite there, like we were talking about, and he went, and he licked his paw. And then Thoth said, the jaguar has been wounded. No, he always say jaguar carries the wound. Like he took it on himself. He did it on purpose. He took on the wound of the world, like Yeshua took on the wound of the world, and now it's time to help him to release that.
It would kind of correlate to the idea or the story of the stellar nations, where it was the jaguars that were defending the goddess, and they took most of the fall, but so that the goddess could be saved. So there are a few connections here, but we can dig more into that because it sounds very interesting. Maybe we'll do it during the path of the jaguar. That should be super exciting.
Yeah,
right.
Super exciting. Well, many more questions to come, Maia, and I think that today's session has been a really great follow-on from the first piece that we did, and certainly there's been very stimulating, lots of interesting topics. Hopefully our audience's own imaginations have been stimulated to maybe to go into meditation, talk to their own guides, or to do further research on. And I have many questions relating now to the crucifixion, to time tsunamis, through what comes through portals, because we've been investigating portals a lot. So maybe we can hold all of these questions in our awareness for part 3 of our ongoing dialogues, Maia, because I think what we're looking at here is incredibly important. It is a bit mind-bending sometimes to think about these jumbled up timelines, but for me personally, and I guess probably for you too, Bella, after all of the research we've done for the Mayan time and magic, is that our history literally doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. The more you look at it, the more you see that it's just a bunch of stitches together. It's a bit like our own DNA coding. You can see where we've been spliced back or cut in the first place. And even some of the scientists recently have been looking into the human genome, and we can see where splicings have been done with the human genome. So we know that we've been spliced as physical beings. And I think that's also really important, because you alluded to it earlier, is that as physical beings, we are not the same as the beings that come through us, our higher self, Thoth, other avatars. And so we are really just in this physical form, a conduit or a vessel, a grail even, you can say, for other energies to pass through us and to interact with the realm. Now, if we're all nice and clean and clear, we can hold those channels. If we're a little bit density and energetically muggy, it's going to be harder. So, so these are all the reasons why it's important to keep cleansing. But with this in mind, Maia, we're very excited to invite you to be part of the Path of the Jaguar with us and to share more of the teachings of Thoth in relation to the pyramid, Quetzal. And Bella, do you have anything you wish to add on the end here before we wrap up for today?
I'd like to give some last few minutes to Maia to wrap up, give us your final thoughts. I know that you have so much, and we're going to try to add some of the links here, but what would you like to close with?
Yeah. Well, I did want to say I've already given you two important links. One to my series on the grids, and the other to the Substack that sort of has a list of things that we talked about. You can follow down, but I will give you one more link, and I'll make a special playlist with some of the things we touched upon here. Okay. And if you're writing some of them down, Davyd, you might send that to me. I think I remember, but I didn't write it down. So, well, I'll work with it. I think I can remember most of them. I saw you writing stuff down, so I thought.
Yeah, I did. I don't think I wrote that down. No, sorry.
Okay. But I will put a playlist together for that. So if you want to, go further, they'll be available. And I guess all I have to say is it's always so wonderful speaking to both of you, because we just kind of, it opens the Pandora's box in a good way. And I'm very, as you might have noticed, I'm very enthusiastic about my work, but that's what keeps me going. So I'm kind of like a little kid. I keep going, I have some answer. I have the answer. That's just my personality, just who I am.
I love it.
Yeah, no, it's all beautiful, Maia. And as we said off camera at the beginning, it's like we see you as sort of the librarian for Thoth's Akashic Records, because the amount of material that you brought through is phenomenal. I think we're coming to a point in our own evolutionary cycle where a lot of it that maybe it's difficult to understand. Having watched a lot of the videos, a lot of the language is a little difficult to understand, but bit by bit, through assimilating it across the language barrier, I'm able to understand it. Bella's able to understand it. And I think that these conversations are also a way of us bringing the language into a space that we can all understand, and then put into the context of what the hell is actually going on right now, and how did we get to this big mess in the first place? Because we are basically, and I think as a final thought, the thing about the light point that Thoth has talked about, to me seems like the end point of the recapitulation of that time tsunami. So I could understand why we might have dinosaurs walking past our windows and angels appearing in the sky and all of those things, because it seems like we're coming back to this kind of almost centrifugal point where the original explosion, tsunami, time ripping happened. And we have to come back into that point and have it, rewired, recalibrated, or reconstituted, something like that, so that time can then flow fractally again, because we've been living in a disjointed time signature, we can say, right, Bella, for the last several thousand years or more. We're not even really sure actually how long it's been going on, because it's all such a mess. So it feels like we're coming into this rewriting period, which I believe is a part of the switch to world system 2.
Because the energies are shifting now, the electromagnetic field and everything, to allow us to rewrite the record correctly, to bring it forward again and beyond, So this is a unique opportunity on the planet. And that's what part of you're doing with your Jaguar journey.
Right. Yeah, exactly. We're super excited, and we want to invite everybody who wants to take part. We'll be starting on the 21st of July, but you can register online from now. We have an early bird until today is the last day of the early bird. But after that, you can join us for 222. And we'll be giving you, we'll be having a couple of live calls and sharing some teachings from every site we visit. So that's kind of exciting. Sounds like it. Yeah,
So yes, everybody, thank you for joining us today. Thank you again to Maia for bringing this information through, and to my wonderful partner Bella for helping to unpack all of this Jumanji-style information into something that I think is starting to make coherent sense for all of us in this moment. I believe that Thoth was channeling through you years, decades ahead of time, Maia, in readiness for this moment. And I think that there are many of us who've received intel prophetically decades ahead of it actually being necessary. And now we're coming to the point where it's like, okay, all of these weird things that have happened to us in our lives suddenly are starting to have more meaning because we're coming to the point where it's all about to happen. So exciting stuff. Please, everybody who's watching this video, do put your comments in the box. We love to hear from you. Put questions to Maia. We're also going to put all of the links to her QLI and her other playlists there. So there should be a lot in the show notes. Please also hit like and subscribe. We want to get this information out to as many people as possible.
Yeah.
And if you like this, please share it with your friends. It is really important, everybody. Those of you watching this will understand why we think this is important in this moment. And of course, we look forward to hopefully seeing some of you on the path of the Jaguar, along with myself, Bella, and Maia. So thank you, everybody, for joining us today for another Quantum Planets World Connections episode. And we'll see you all again very, very soon for something else. Bye for
In
now.
Lakesh.
In Lakesh.
Ish.